Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Independent Women YouTube channel. As you know, we started series of videos, Independent Women on a Mission, that has its mission basically to bring you some inspiration, motivation, as well as tools how to reconnect with your life mission, live the life full of fulfillment, get a completely different quality of life, as well as establish a huge vision and make it come true. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and press notification button. And if you want to learn more about our growing global community of independent women, you can check it here. Today, I have a very special guest who is joining us all the way from Belgium. She has a beautiful mission to transform European Union via new culture, leadership, and women empowerment. She is a European policymaker as well as a host of the podcast Light on Europe, founder of several women empowerment networks, as well as a career coach for young future leaders. What a beautiful mission. So meet Lucia Klesnitsova. Hello, Lucia.
Valerie, thanks a lot for having me.
It's so amazing to have beautiful women sharing their vision and mission with us. So before we jump into some tools and resources, just like, can you please share with us how did you reconnect with your mission and share more about your amazing work and amazing changes that you are doing nowadays in European Union?
Well, thanks a lot for raising the bar really, really high in this introduction. Thanks a lot. It's been a journey of exploration for me, for everybody else, I guess. I feel it can be a bit overwhelming to label it as a mission because I feel that it's a work in progress and our missions keep on reinventing as we are reinventing ourselves along the journey. So I rather prefer looking at it as a play and self-discovery along the different experiments that we're doing in our life. My journey started with a passion for technology in IT industry, and over time it started transforming from the hard tech into soft tech, the technology of transformation of people, and how we can, through personal development and inner work, empower each other on our journey to reconnect with the mission that you've mentioned and with our talents and express them for the cause that is dear to our heart. And so I've moved from the business into the policy making space. I now work in one of the European Union institutions in Brussels, Belgium. And I basically complement this passion for policy making and large systems change with all kinds of projects where I aim to empower the individuals, as you said, through coaching and mentoring, for instance, or through all kinds of communication experiments like the podcast Light on Europe, where I'm trying to shine the light on the human story behind the story of the European institutions, which often seem a bit abstract or distant to the general public. And I feel it's very important for the trust of general public and also for the attractiveness of public sector as an employer to show a little bit more about who are the people behind the scenes, how are these really important decisions taken and designed, who are the people behind them, why do they care, how do we succeed, how do we fail. So all that is a big focus of my activities these past years, and I'm really curious where it's gonna bring us in the future.
Well, thank you for sharing. And that, as you said, the journey of self-discovery, it also allows us in a way obtain or get like new skills, knowledge, resources, connections, build a network. And I think it leads step by step to something really big. So I want to say it is a mission and all the beautiful work that you're doing. So, I know that European Union does promote gender equality like in terms of uh, pay of women like equally to the men, as well as provide them with the equal opportunities, as well as to create the balance between the work and as well as other areas of life. And I think another huge thing is to create policies that are aiming stop the violence against women and girls, and this is a huge thing. However, nowadays we do have a lot of like numerous amount of countries that are still far away from this position. So what are the very, you know, practical steps, not just like talking and really practical things that can be adapted from the European Union countries in order to spread it worldwide, basically when it comes to gender equality, providing greater work for women, and also stop this violence against women and girls?
That's a big question. I'm wondering from which angle to approach it. I guess the most important element of this is adapting to obviously the context in which we're operating. That's one thing where we try to lead by example in a way and set, you know, the best practices and do a lot of knowledge sharing across the borders and across the continents as well outside of the European Union. But we are aware that, as we often say in the policy bubble, one size doesn't fit all, and we have to be knowledgeable of what is the individual circumstances and the cultural conditioning also in which we are talking about gender equality. So since you have a very global audience, it's very important to always almost take a distance from what is it that we're observing and what is the context in which it was applied, which is where the second side of the coin applies, which is our individual responsibility for making the change happen. And how can we learn from those examples that we see, and how can we apply that legislation that creates an opportunity for something? But then it's always the responsibility of every individual, family, employer, boss, a parent, an organization to try to reflect on how can they apply it in their own circumstance, because obviously legislation enables work-life balance, enables termination of violence, enables equal pay, but then the enforcement of it and making it the reality is another thing. That's why the networks like these and projects like these are so important, because it keeps on almost emphasizing the issue every day and trying to create openings for that conversation, so that for a person who hasn't been as open to the conversation before, maybe one day, someday it's going to land and it's going to get them to show up for action in a different way, or turn from being just an observer of a conversation into that agent of change in the sphere of influence that they have around them.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's all about joining the forces and keeping, as you said, this noise alive and spreading it globally. I know it maybe sounds like a cliche and everybody is talking about this, but you know, at the end of the day, it's all about taking action and continuing the movement. So from regulations to the real workplace, we know that there are growing amount of women who are, for example, in charge, who are CEOs or founders, but still the amount of women who are in charge is far away from the numbers of men who have the same positions. So yes, women empowerment as well as the female leadership is supported nowadays on so many levels. But what changes you think the female leadership can bring? So why women should stand out and how to create this momentum for some women? The reason I'm asking this question is because it's time for women really to stand out and really be heard, really do what they really believe in and speak their truth. So how to raise, like, start this momentum, keep this momentum, and creating space for women be heard, and also start to taking these leadership roles.
Question. I think it's we are very blessed that we're in the middle of the momentum in a sense. I think the conversation has massively leaped forward over the past years, and I think that all of us are very grateful for those women who were on the front line trying to get the seat at the table in the past years. And that's where it was so important to basically do the awareness raising around the value of the diversity that you're now asking about. I think that the next level and the next generation of the conversation now needs to be advancing from the numbers conversation around where's the point of diversity, women on board, occupy the numbers conversation, and moving from there into a much more qualitative conversation, asking what is the added value of diverse leadership, how can we empower each other to have the freedom and have the trust and have the courage to be vulnerable and show up with the much more feminine and authentic leadership when we have that seat at the table, because there's nothing worse, as I've often discussed with the female guests that I had on my podcast, there's nothing worse to almost waste that opportunity to be at the table, but be almost under that pressure to follow the example that was being set by the typically men in the organization who were leading the cultural into certain direction. So now that we have many very successful women on top, including the European institutions, it's very important that these women are given the tools and the platform to show up through that style of feminine leadership that the world needs, and that basically all of us appreciate when we see that being applied in practice. So the role models element is extremely important. In some sectors, we see that once we've seen the pioneers showing the way, then it's much more easier for other women to follow suit. And in some sectors, it's still very, very tricky. So I think the biggest challenge now is that we kind of figure out the tools and the dissemination mechanisms and the empowerment structures for the women who manage to get that opportunity, to give them the tools to find ways to tune in with that leadership style. And when you're in that hot seat, figuring out how is it that you can remain the feminine leader and not fall into that trap of following the pseudo example, which was the only one that you have seen in the past, but which may not be the one which you wish to bring, and by far maybe not the best one that your organization or community want to see.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think the key here is to be truly authentic. If you really want to discover your style of leadership, as you mentioned, and this also gives the opportunity basically to bring this awareness or truth really on an authentic base. And that's what we really need nowadays, because there is an incredible flow of information, incredible flow of different types of noise, and some of them we know it's not the truth. It's has some specific aim that is behind the scenes, and not everybody see that. That's why it's so important that women nowadays stand out, tuning with their true, authentic, who they really are, basically, and start spreading this awareness globally. I think this is one of the keys as well. So we are waiting for the premiere, or if you are watching this video already after, this is I'm talking about the movie The Unspoken Truth. This is one of the projects that includes women from 20 different countries who are having this conversation of independency, of freedom, and Eulogia is one of the featured speakers there. So what is the base and foundation of independency for you as a woman, whether it's a financial area or maybe on like mental level, spiritual level?
What's the foundation of my own independence is many things. It's a puzzle of a lot of inner work that I've been doing in order to be able to tap into what it actually means for me. How does it look for me? Because I guess it means something else for everybody on this earth. So it's important to know what is it that we're aspiring for. And then it's a combination of the education, very, very big work that all of us have to be doing in rewiring our brains and figuring out how does it look in terms of our careers, our relationships, our businesses, because I'm not sure how many of those of us listening to us have had a chance to go through a real school of life where they would have been taught how to really design an authentic way of living. Most of us have been through an education which formatted us into certain idea of how success looks. So it's very important as we go along this way to recreate that new vision for ourselves of how that freedom of self-expression and creation looks. And then what's a very important piece of the puzzle for me is having support structures around me, having access to like-minded and aligned leaders who are on a similar path, who are very committed to their inner work, who try to challenge themselves and grow on a long-term basis and create something that is very important, useful contribution to the society, but also an authentic contribution from their own soul calling perspective. And so for me, that's a very important support piece when I'm trying to figure out what is the best path for me to follow. It's very useful to always have a tribe to check in with and to almost recalibrate whenever you feel like you need to have that conversation about finding what is the best combination of following your own calling, but also challenging yourself enough and staying true to what you want to create outside.
As you mentioned, self-expression is a huge part and element of the independence and freedom. And I believe it's all about the choice. Taking, for example, this year, for some people, it was a total roller coaster full of challenges and a lot of issues. Well, basically, for maybe all of us. But at the same time, a lot of people took this time and took the space for themselves to really start in rediscovering and reflecting, as well as self-expressing themselves. And I know that you also was working behind the scenes on a very exciting project. It's your book. So could you please share with us more about what is this book about, as well as when it's going to be released publicly and where people can find it, read it?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. The book is a very nice continuation of the podcast that I've already mentioned, Lights in Europe, which is a platform for interviewing leaders who are committed to growing European Union. The book provides an overview of the best of the 50 interviews that I've conducted with the leaders from the European Union policymaking space, basically looking at the values driving the careers of these leaders, looking at how did they build their self-expression path, how did they go through their own traumas and very low points in their life journey, how did they create who they are and what is empowering them on their path to contributing to European Union in this context. But I'm sure it's very applicable for a larger audience, not only people who are passionate about policymaking and international relations and EU, but also people who are simply called to create some kind of social impact and who believe in purpose-driven and values-based leadership. So if anybody feels like this mission resonates with them, I would invite them to connect with me on any of my social media, go to my website. I'm not sure if it will be possible to put a link in the description of this video to connect with me online, or go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Lucia Koshtincova, which you can find by looking for my name, and there you will find all the necessary information to go and check out the book either in electronic or printed format. And it's going to be a very nice bridge between this first season of the Lights in Europe podcast into the continued work, where I will be digging deeper from that perspective of policymaking careers into the inner work that the leaders are doing, really to show up as the leaders that we know and admire oftentimes, but we are not often as knowledgeable about what was the journey behind the scenes and the decades of work that they have been doing on themselves. So that's what I'm super excited about to bring to the audience.
Thank you for sharing this. And thank you very much for your time tuning in today and sharing with our audience your wisdom.
So thank you very much for having me, and it's really an honor to have a chance that our journeys merged through this project, and I'm really curious to see what's going to be the feedback of the audience.
To summarize this, it's basically constant self-development as well as self-discovery, connection with the true, authentic who you really are, and creating a foundation based on the true values, your belief system, and making sure that it is integrated and find the place in any project that you are going to do or you are now in the process of doing, as well as creating space for yourself, creating projects where you can basically share this wisdom, inspiration, some steps, whether it's practical or some kind of concept, how we can change the space, the area, and even the world where we live in. It is possible. There are a lot of tools, and some of them you heard also today. So I hope that more women are feeling inspired to finally step into their real power and go for their vision. I see you in the next video.